Hello, everybody. It's Larry GM, and we're here to talk about the Astros wild card position players. So yesterday we did the pitchers. Today we're going to do the position players. Um, jump to the website, check out those articles. You'll have links to the videos. Before I get into it, hey, if you're watching this video on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Please like the video. That'll give our YouTube channel a chance to grow. And honestly, guys, that's probably where I'm going to be spending more time, less writing, more video, um, over the next year or so, or however long I continue to do this. Um, so a couple days ago, or yesterday, I showed how the wild card teams have allocated pitchers versus position players on their postseason staff. That article is the first article linked here. The conclusion from that is that most teams use 12 pitchers and have 14 position players on their roster. So let's focus in with that knowledge, who are the 14 position players the Astros are likely to use? What will those lineups look like? Who's on the bubble for that last spot? I'm going to surprise you with my answer, I think. And how do we project those 14 hitters to perform? What would happen if Jordan Alvarez was not ready? How big of an impact that is? That's everything we have in this article laid out for you. So basically, I'm going to give you the overview snapshot, and here I've got the 15 position players that I think this exercise comes down to. The top 14 on this list, those are the 14 I think make the Astros postseason roster for the wild card round. No surprises here except for the last one, where I have Pedro Leon. But you can also, what I've also shown here is what their seasons stats for WRC Plus were, what their ex Wobas were versus left handed pitching, what their ex Wobas so far have been for right handed pitching. And quite honestly, guys, I think the stats as they sit today, I'm not sure who Cleveland and the Astros are going to be rolling out. So a guy could hit 4 home runs in the next 3 days, and you may have to wonder like who's he hit, what pitching is he hitting it off of. So we'll see how that plays out. But I'm not so. I guess what I'm trying to tell you is I'm not so worried about the fact that I'm not doing this exercise before the last 3 games of the season. Then what I also showed you guys here is the stats for the WRC Plus stats for the Astros hitters since August 1st. So since the trade deadline, how these players have been doing. You see, some guys have been hot, some guys have been cold. And I also gave you the number of plate appearances they've had, which I think is instructive. Like, okay, the fact that Jason Hayward has 56 plate appearances. He hasn't even been on the team the whole time. Shea Wickham has 46. You can kind of tell that they're not counting on Shea Wickham as their start in this postseason. Not none of that should be a surprise, right? So then what I did is I projected what I believe the likely wild card plate appearances will be. So for the 14 players I project to be on the roster, what their plate appearances will be, and what order I would have, what the starting order would be versus a left-hand starting pitcher and a right-hand starting pitcher. The Astros are most likely to face the Royals or the Tigers. Both of them have, I think they'd end up with 2 right-handed starting pitchers and 1 left-handed starting pitcher. I'll get into all that when we actually have an opponent, what the order will be, and I'll be referring to this data here. Here's my lineup versus this starting pitcher. Here's my lineup versus that starting pitcher. That I'll take into account, the strengths and weaknesses of those pitchers. But this is at a little higher level. That so versus the left-handed pitchers, I think again expect both Caratini and Diaz to be in the lineup, and versus right-handed pitching, I expect Singleton and Diaz will be in the lineup. That's in a world that we have Jordan Alvarez back. Okay, so there's another couple interesting numbers here. You see the numbers for the ex-Wobbles versus lefties, 322, ex-Wobbles versus righties, 325. So very balanced. This team's equally as well versus the two kinds of lineups with everybody of these guys in there. And you'll see that versus overall the team has a 111 WRC plus. That's a in my scale, my grading scale, that's a B plus. If you look at just the players um, that I project to be on the AL wild card roster, and how many plate appearances they had in the August to the end of the season world, that lineup, though that group would have a 116 WRC plus, so it's better, right? And okay, that's not too much of a surprise. You play less of the, I'm not projecting Shea Wickham to get a single plate appearance, all right, and I'm not projecting Leon will get a plate appearance. Okay, let's get into the Leon and Leon versus Kessinger. That's where I think the decision comes down to. Why do I think the Astros are going to have Pedro Leon? Well, Pedro Leon has 29 stolen bases in AAA this year, and he has 2 for the Astros. I guess Kessinger has I don't know, it's less than 10 or around 10. What I think of Miles Straw in 2018, Miles Straw was on the 2018 postseason roster. He stole a base. He had two games he appeared in that postseason, and he never had a plate appearance. That's what I expect. He's the designated runner, and you think, why would you allocate a roster spot for that? Well, guys, and think of a world where John Singleton gets a single, and we're in a tight game. We need to steal second, or we need to, uh, maybe Singleton gets a double, and that's the tying run on second base. I can easily see Pedro Leon being the weapon you want to deploy to score that run on a single, or even gets to third, scores on a sacrifice fly, those sorts of things. I think that's why we're going to have Pedro Leon on the roster. Now, the Astros may choose not to do this. The balance of this is Wickham has 26 stolen bases in AAA, so you could use Wickham the same way theoretically, but he hasn't stolen a base since he's been in the major. So I don't know. I just think that Pedro Leon, when you get to this 14th position player spot, there's not a lot of options that you would say, oh my gosh, we got to have this guy. Greg Kessinger hasn't hit worth a darn, and so you're not looking at any of those the last slot of this lineup to be a hitting person. You're looking at that. I think you're going to look at Pedro Leon. Maybe Pedro Leon plays center. May plays left field as a defensive replacement in the ninth inning, or if you pulled Myers in the seventh with a pinch hitter, you put you put John Singleton in the hit for Myers in the seventh, and Pedro Leon goes on and plays defense to close out the game. All right, that's what and Pedro Leon's a great fielder too. So that's where I think and no one's I don't know, I haven't heard anybody else talk about it. Maybe others have talked about that, but that's my expectation. Pedro Leon, the 14th position player. I mean, others are telling you they're going to have 13 pitchers and 13 position players. They're not. They're going to have 12 pitchers and 14 position players, and I think Pedro Leon's going to be the 14th one. All right. Well, let's get down further into this. Let's look at this roster from a platoon basis. Okay. So let's look at it versus lefties, starting pitchers. What do I expect the lineup to be? I'm not going to go through this in detail and try to make this a short video, but there's the data, right? You guys can look at what I think's going to happen. This is the batting order I expect there to be. You're going to have both Diaz and Caratini in there, Hayward and Singleton available as your left-handed pinch hitters. So when that lefty starter leaves the game, they go to a right-hander out of the bullpen. Those guys are there to be a pinch hitter for a Jake Myers or even a Mauricio Dubon. All right, so there you go. That's my expectation with that. So the interesting numbers here is that's a 333. Um, okay. The average xWOBA in the major leagues this year, 315 versus left-handed starting pitchers. The Astros lineup that we would project to be in the wild card is going to be a 333 xWOBA. So you can see that's a really good lineup. All right, that's all projects. I didn't do platoon stats on the WRC plus, but that's a 123 WRC plus. So they're significantly better than the full season or even the 116 that we were project that roster to be. So versus right-handed starting pitchers, again, we go to platoon. We allocate this only to the plate appearances that I project will happen in a game in a AL wild card game with a right-handed starting pitcher. That this lineup would be a 122 WRC plus, or it's actually a 342 xWOBA. That's really you're getting really. I mean, that's better than any team hitting. So there's the lineup. In this case, I have Singleton in the lineup playing first base and Diaz playing catcher. And that therefore Caratini is available off the bench as a pinch hitter and Dubon's available off the bench as a pinch hitter. So you got Haywood in the game. The lefties are in versus the righty starting pitcher. So there you go, and there's the xWOBA numbers versus the right-handed, and you can see why those decisions are made. All right, let's look at So let's go to the nightmare scenario. What happens to the lineups without Alvarez? Like say he's not coming back. I haven't even checked today whether he is or not. I just wanted to put this out there. What could happen if he's not available. And I see it. I have a chat and I'm ignoring it. Hang on, guys. And so we have the Alvarez, the lineup in the Astros wild card without Alvarez. So you can see everybody moves up a slot. And you got Altuve, and then you got Tucker batting second. You get then versus the lefties, you've got Diaz, Caratini, and guys, there's really no good. I mean, if you want to take Whitcomb's limited plate appearances and project that to put him in the lineup and his 319 xWOBA, you can do that. I think the Astros will say, "Hey, bat John Singleton eighth. I know he's been terrible from an xWOBA standpoint versus left-handed starting pitchers, because there's no real option versus a lefty in the Astros system." Because if there were, then I'd be saying that guy's the 14th position player. I just don't see it. Maybe I'll figure something out, but I think this what you're going to have is this lineup. It's a tough situation without Jordan Alvarez versus left-handed starting pitching, and that's reflected in the 315. So basically, the lineup becomes an average projected xWOBA lineup with a left-handed starting pitching out there, and that's because those last two slots in the lineup are pretty rough with Dubon and Singleton versus lefties. Versus righties, it's not quite as bad. I mean, obviously, losing Alvarez is always bad, but versus the righties, at least you have Singleton in there, who's a 336 xWOBA hitter. And so really what happens is Caratini was on the bench, now he's in the lineup, and it's 328 xWOBA versus righties. That's above better than average, right? So. But you lose him as a potential pinch hitter off the bench. But there's your lineup versus right-handed starting pitching. So without Alvarez in the lineup. So here's a summary to summarize all this. Larry, you've kind of lost me in all the numbers. So let's just pull back. So if you look at it from a 2024 season standpoint, the XWOBA numbers are 322 versus lefties, 325 versus righties, versus left-handers for the players that we consider starters or the plate appearance distribution versus a typical left-handed pitching starter, 333 and 342. So that's a really good lineup if we get Alvarez back and he's healthy enough to hit like Jordan Alvarez. It's a really good lineup, both righties and lefties. Although you do see that the lineup's better versus righty. That's because Jordan Alvarez is left. I mean, I know we talk about how great Alvarez and Tucker are versus left-handed pitching, but they're even better than that versus right-handed pitching. Just so you guys remember that, and you can see those numbers up top. If you have to play the wild card round without Alvarez, then you're basically 315. You're an average hitting roster. You're worse than the regular season actual numbers, and you're slightly better than you were during the regular season versus righties. Again, there's a gap there, and you'd hope to beat the two righties with your 325 or your 331 XWOBA lineup, and you kind of as we showed with the pitching should be really, really good. So there you go. That's how I look at the lineup. If you have any questions, let me know. Like once again, if you're here watching the video, I know we're here almost 17 minutes. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and there you go, guys. That's how I view the Astros pitching yesterday and today, the wild card position players. That's how I view the lineups. So there's the batting orders. That's how I view what happens if Alvarez isn't in there. It's all right there, and 17 and a half minutes.